Do you think that the Iranian strike against Israel could affect the course of the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip?
Thank you, Karim, for having me. Definitely, the escalation in Lebanon had a detrimental effect on the efforts to reach a final ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. As we can see, the entire conflict in the Middle East right now is completely interconnected between Israel on the one hand and the non-state actors in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, backed by Iran. It rather represents a war by proxy between both sides. And of course, with the recent escalation and the Iranian strike on central Israel yesterday, using about 200 missiles or more, it definitely sends warning signals that this might escalate into an actual regional war.
What is your comment on the developments in the Middle East generally, and will the intensity of the confrontations rise further in the coming period?
It seems that we are on a trajectory towards more and more escalation, unfortunately. It doesn't seem that many powers are scrambling, or international powers are scrambling to contain the ongoing escalation, specifically between Iran and Israel at the moment. President Biden, a few moments ago, or a couple of hours ago, said that he is against, or he does not support, any Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. However, that doesn't mean that the United States is trying to restrain Israel or prevent it from launching a retaliatory strike against Iran, which could further escalate matters, especially with what we have seen with what Axios has told us today, that Israel could potentially target Tehran, the Iranian capital, major infrastructure facilities, and even members of the Iranian leadership, and oil rigs and oil refineries, and some even spoke of targeting the nuclear facilities. So we are on the precipice of a very dangerous escalation.
Right. Now, as you mentioned, the statements and news reports have been calling, or have been stating about the possibility of targeting oil and nuclear sites. As you mentioned, that Joe Biden has stated that the United States does not support Israel in targeting nuclear sites. However, the possibility of oil sites is still on the table. How do you think this is going to change the discourse of the escalation in the region generally?
Well, we cannot deal with a retaliatory strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities or nuclear program as a fait accompli. Far from it. Probably the United States will exercise substantial pressure for them to prevent them from taking such a course or targeting.
Do you think statements by Joe Biden saying that the United States is not supporting Israel in targeting nuclear sites in Iran, you think that would be some sort of pressure on Israel?
Of course it is. That's an indication of pressure. However, whether this pressure will actually yield the desired results is questionable, especially given the United States record in exerting pressure on Israel over the past year, better part of the past year. The United States has claimed that it has exerted a surmountable amount of pressure in order to prevent Israel from escalating in Gaza and then in Lebanon. However, they have failed miserably to prevent them from doing so. So there is reason to have fears that they might fail in containing them. However, this time the consequences might have a very far reach and have far more worse consequences, because if Israel actually targets the nuclear facilities or the nuclear program of Iran, that means an all-out war between both powers. Iran has thousands of missiles. It will launch and target the entirety of Israel if that happens. And in retaliation, Israel will launch more and more strikes on Iran, and this might even drag the United States into the conflict, and this is the last thing that the United States wants. So that's the only thing that gives us a bit of hope that the United States pressure this time might succeed in containing or curtailing the impact and the scope of the Israeli retaliation. However, Israel will retaliate, and it will retaliate very heavy-handedly in response to the Iranian attacks, because yesterday's attacks were very much different than the ones we saw in April. Yesterday's attacks left massive destruction in many parts of Israel. And it actually, Netanyahu wanted these results and wanted this escalation to take place in order for it to be a pretext to engage in further escalation.
Finally, Dr. Mohammed, aside from the United States, what do you think of the international reaction to the Iranian attack yesterday?
It's rather hypocritical because we have seen France and the European Union and Germany and Japan and most of the major powers and the major countries that are allied with the United States condemning and strongly condemning the Iranian attack, neglecting that Israel actually was the one who started this entire chain of escalation by targeting Iran on more than one occasion, especially with the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in central Tehran. That was a direct attack, the violation of international law and the UN Charter. So actually, Iran was theoretically within the right to defend themselves and to retaliate in some way. So, and of course, if we speak of further Israeli acts of aggression against Lebanon, a sovereign state, a member state of the United Nations that is being invaded right now by Israel and that is being decimated and destroyed by Israeli airstrikes, or the illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories that has been going for the past 57 years, and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. I think international law is definitely not on the side of Israel, but that doesn't really matter to these great powers, and that chose to selectively condemn Iran and turn a complete blind eye on Israel's atrocities elsewhere.